Jonathan Hayes was not your typical CEO. While many leaders of large companies spent their days locked away in corner offices, Jonathan preferred to stay connected to his employees. He believed that understanding the heartbeat of Apex Innovations was key to its success. That's why when he received an anonymous email late one evening, his instincts told him something wasn't right. The email came from someone named Lily Carter, a junior employee in the marketing department. It didn't provide much detail, just a vague mention of inappropriate behavior by Robert Grant, the head of marketing. At first glance, it seemed like another routine complaint, something HR would handle quietly and efficiently. But there was something about the tone of the message that caught Jonathan's attention. It wasn't angry or accusatory. Instead, it carried a note of fear, as though Lily was scared to even send it. Jonathan leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling of his spacious office. His mind raced with questions. What exactly had happened? Was this an isolated incident, or was it part of a larger problem within the company? Apex Innovations prided itself on fostering a safe and inclusive workplace, but no organization was perfect. If what Lily said was true, then Jonathan knew he couldn't ignore it. He picked up his phone and dialed Olivia Bennett, the head of human resources. Olivia was one of the few people Jonathan trusted completely. She had been with the company for years and had a reputation for handling sensitive issues with care and professionalism. "Olivia," Jonathan began after she answered, "I need to talk to you about something important." Her voice immediately turned serious. "Of course, Jonathan. What's going on?" "I just got an email from someone in marketing. They're accusing Robert Grant of inappropriate behavior. I don't have all the details yet, but I want to get to the bottom of this before things escalate." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Robert Grant?" Olivia repeated, sounding surprised. "Are you sure about this? He's always come across as professional during meetings." "That's why I'm calling you," Jonathan replied. "I don't want to jump to conclusions, but we can't afford to overlook this either. I think we should investigate further." Olivia agreed, though she sounded cautious. "We could launch a formal inquiry, but if word gets out, it might spook whoever sent the email. People are often hesitant to speak up, especially against someone in a position of power." Jonathan nodded, even though Olivia couldn't see him. "That's what I'm worried about too, which is why I've been thinking maybe I should handle this myself." "What do you mean?" Olivia asked, her tone sharp with concern. "I mean going undercover," Jonathan explained. "If I pose as an assistant or someone lower down the chain, I might be able to observe firsthand what's really going on in that department. No one would suspect me." Olivia let out a small laugh. "You're serious about this, aren't you?" "Completely," Jonathan said firmly. "Think about it. Who would ever expect the CEO to walk among them as a regular employee? It's the best way to get the truth without causing panic." After a moment of hesitation, Olivia sighed. "All right, Jonathan. If you're set on doing this, I'll support you. But we need to be careful. If anyone finds out, it could blow up in our faces." Over the next few days, Jonathan and Olivia worked together to create a cover story. They decided that Jonathan would assume the identity of Jason Miller, a new administrative assistant transferred from another branch of the company. To make the disguise convincing, Jonathan traded in his tailored suits for simpler outfits, dark slacks, button-up shirts, and plain ties. He also adopted a quieter demeanor, avoiding drawing attention to himself. On his first day as Jason, Jonathan arrived early at the office, carrying a stack of folders and a notebook. The marketing department occupied the third floor of Apex Innovations headquarters, a bright and open space filled with cubicles and collaborative workstations. As he stepped off the elevator, he felt a mix-up of excitement and nerves. This was uncharted territory for him, and he couldn't afford to slip up. Robert Grant greeted him shortly after he settled into his assigned desk. Tall and broad-shouldered, Robert exuded confidence. He shook Jonathan's hand firmly and gave him a quick rundown of the team's responsibilities. "Welcome aboard, Jason," Robert said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "We're glad to have you here. Let me know if you need anything." Jonathan nodded politely, making a mental note of how easily Robert switched between charm and authority. Over the next few hours, he introduced himself to the rest of the team. Most of them were friendly enough, though he noticed a palpable tension whenever Robert entered the room. One person who stood out to him was Lily Carter. Petite and soft-spoken, she seemed nervous around everyone, not just Robert. When Jonathan approached her later that afternoon, offering to help organize some files, she flinched slightly before forcing a smile. "Thanks, Jason," she murmured, keeping her gaze fixed on her computer screen. Her reaction only deepened Jonathan's resolve to uncover the truth. As the day wore on, Jonathan observed subtle signs of trouble. During a team meeting, Robert singled out Mia Thompson, another junior employee, criticizing her presentation in front of everyone. Though Mia tried to defend herself, Robert cut her off, dismissing her arguments with a wave of his hand. Jonathan watched as Mia's face flushed with embarrassment, while others avoided eye contact, clearly uncomfortable. By the time he left the office that evening, Jonathan's mind was racing. The pieces were starting to come together, but he still lacked concrete evidence. For now, all he could do was keep observing and hope that someone, perhaps Lily or Mia, would trust him enough to share their side of the story. Little did he know, the real challenges were only beginning. As days turned into weeks, Jonathan, or rather Jason, settled deeper into his role as an assistant in the marketing department. He quickly learned that blending in wasn't just about dressing differently or speaking less. It was about observing every detail, no matter how small. Every conversation, every interaction, every facial expression told a story. And the more time he spent around Robert Grant, the clearer the picture became. Robert's behavior was a strange mix of charm and control. On the surface, he seemed like the ideal leader, confident, decisive, and always ready with a compliment when it suited him. But beneath that polished exterior lay something darker. Jonathan noticed how Robert often singled out junior staff, members praising them one moment and tearing them down the next. It was almost like a game, designed to keep them off balance and dependent on his approval. Lily Carter remained a mystery to Jonathan. She rarely spoke unless spoken to, and even then her words were clipped and cautious. Whenever Robert approached her desk, she would tense up, clutching her pen or fidgeting with papers. Once Jonathan saw her hastily close a document on her computer screen when Robert walked by. It made him wonder what she was hiding or what she feared. Mia Thompson, on the other hand, was harder to intimidate. After the embarrassing incident during the team meeting, Jonathan expected her to retreat into silence like many others might have. Instead, she continued to stand her ground, albeit quietly. During lunch breaks, he sometimes caught her talking, with Lily in hushed tones, their expressions serious. Whatever they discussed, it was clear they shared a bond, and possibly a secret. One afternoon, while sorting through files in a storage room, Jonathan overheard voices outside. He recognized Robert's deep tone immediately, followed by Mia's softer reply. Curiosity got the better of him, and he moved closer to listen without being seen. "You've got potential, Mia," Robert was saying, his voice smooth but laced with authority. "But you need to learn how to play the game. If you want to move up in this company, you'll do what I say." "I'm trying my best, Mr. Grant," Mia responded, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. "But I don't think it's fair to criticize me in front of everyone." "It's not about fairness," Robert shot back, his patience wearing thin. "It's about results. You either fall in line or you get left behind. Understand?" There was a pause before Mia replied, her voice quieter now. "Yes, sir." Jonathan clenched his fists, resisting the urge to step out and confront Robert right then and there. But he knew he couldn't act yet, not without proof. For now, all he could do was file away the memory, adding it to the growing list of red flags. Later that week, Jonathan decided to take a risk. He approached Lily during a quiet moment when most of the team had gone home for the day. Pretending to organize some documents, he casually asked, "Hey, Lily, how are things going? You seem kind of stressed lately." Lily froze for a second, her eyes darting toward Robert's empty office before settling on Jonathan. "Oh, it's nothing, really. Just busy with projects." Jonathan nodded sympathetically. I get that. This place can be overwhelming sometimes. But if you ever need help or just want to talk, I'm here, okay? I know we're all supposed to tough it out, but sometimes it helps to share the load. For a moment, Lily looked like she might actually open up. Her lips parted as though she wanted to say something, but then she hesitated and shook her head. Thanks, Jason, that means a lot. But I'm fine, really. Jonathan didn't press further. Pushing too hard might scare her away completely. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that she was holding back. Likely because of fear. Fear of retaliation, fear of losing her job, or maybe even fear of not being believed. The following day, Jonathan found himself assigned to assist Robert directly. It was both an opportunity and a challenge. Up close, Robert's tactics became even more apparent. He micromanaged everything, demanding constant updates and nitpicking minor details. When Jonathan made a slight error in formatting a report, Robert snapped, "Are you even paying attention, Jason? This is basic stuff." Jonathan forced himself to stay calm, apologizing and correcting the mistake without argument. Inside, however, he felt a surge of anger. He understood now why so many people in the department seemed to walk on eggshells around Robert. The man thrived on making others feel inadequate. Despite the mounting evidence, Jonathan still struggled to gather concrete proof. Rumors and observations weren't enough to take down someone as powerful as Robert. He needed hard facts, emails, recordings, anything that could substantiate the claims against him. That's when Olivia stepped in again. Late one evening, after most of the staff had left, Olivia met Jonathan in his temporary office. She carried a small digital recorder, which she handed to him. "Here," she said softly. "Use this sparingly. Only when you're sure it's safe. We can't afford any mistakes." Jonathan took the device, nodding in gratitude. "Thanks, Olivia. I'll be careful." Over the next few days, Jonathan used the recorder strategically, capturing snippets of conversations between Robert and his subordinates. One particularly damning exchange occurred late one night when Robert cornered Lily near the coffee machine. Jonathan lingered nearby, pretending to check emails on his phone. "Listen, Lily," Robert began, his tone deceptively friendly. "I've been thinking about your performance lately. You've got talent, but you need to show more initiative. Maybe we should discuss it over dinner sometime." Lily stiffened, clearly uncomfortable. I don't think that's necessary, Mr. Grant. I'll try harder, I promise." "It's not about trying harder," Robert insisted, moving closer. "It's about building connections. Trust me, it'll benefit you in the long run." Jonathan's blood boiled, but he kept his composure, letting the recorder capture every word. Finally, Lily managed to extricate herself from the situation, mumbling an excuse about needing to finish a task. As soon as she was gone, Jonathan slipped the device back into his pocket, feeling a mix of triumph and dread. He finally had something tangible, but using it meant exposing everything. By the end of the week, Jonathan realized he couldn't delay any longer. The pieces were falling into place, but the clock was ticking. Sooner or later, Robert would catch on to his presence, or, worse, target someone else. Jonathan knew it was time to act. But first, he needed to ensure he had allies who would back him up when the truth came to light. He reached out to Olivia once more, sharing the recordings and recounting everything he'd witnessed. Together, they devised a plan to confront Robert, not with accusations, but with undeniable evidence. It was risky, but Jonathan felt confident that justice would prevail. After all, protecting the people of Apex Innovations was his responsibility as CEO and as a human being. The annual holiday party at Apex Innovations was always a big deal. Held in the company's spacious conference hall, it was an evening filled with music, food, and laughter, a chance for employees to unwind after a busy year. For Jonathan Hayes, however, the event carried far more weight than usual. As Jason Miller, he attended the party alongside his colleagues, keeping a close eye on Robert Grant. This wasn't just another social gathering. It was an opportunity to gather evidence that could finally bring Robert's misconduct to light. Jonathan had spent weeks undercover, piecing together fragments of information about Robert's behavior. He'd heard unsettling comments, witnessed moments of intimidation, and even recorded some damning conversations. But none of it felt conclusive enough to confront Robert outright. Not yet. Tonight, though, he hoped to catch something undeniable. The evening started innocently enough. Employees mingled freely, exchanging small talk and enjoying the buffet. Jonathan stayed in character as Jason, blending into the crowd without drawing attention. He made casual conversation with Mia and Lily, who both seemed more relaxed outside the confines of the office. Even so, Jonathan noticed how Lily tensed whenever Robert entered the room. Robert himself appeared unusually jovial, moving from group to group with a glass of champagne in hand. His charisma was undeniable, and many people laughed at his jokes or nodded along to his stories. Yet beneath the surface charm, Jonathan sensed the same manipulative energy that defined Robert's leadership style. It was only a matter of time before it surfaced again. As the night wore on, Jonathan positioned himself near the bar, where several junior staff members had gathered. Among them was Lily, who stood quietly sipping her drink. Jonathan watched as Robert approached her, his smile broad but slightly forced. "Lily," he said, his voice carrying over the hum of conversation, "you look lovely tonight." Lily forced a polite smile, clearly uncomfortable. "Thank you, Mr. Grant." "Call me Robert," he insisted, leaning closer. "We're all friends here, aren't we?" Jonathan's stomach churned as he observed the exchange. He moved closer, pretending to refill his own drink while keeping one ear tuned to their conversation. Robert continued, his tone shifting subtly. "You know, I've been thinking about your career trajectory. With a little guidance, and maybe a bit of extra effort, you could go far in this company. Very far." Lily shifted uneasily, trying to maintain distance. "I appreciate your advice, Mr. Grant. I'll keep working hard." "It's not just about working hard," Robert replied, his voice dropping lower. "It's about seizing opportunities when they present themselves. Like right now, for example." Jonathan clenched his fists under the table, resisting the urge to intervene immediately. Instead, he activated the hidden recorder in his pocket, ensuring every word was captured. He knew he had to wait for the right moment to step in. Too soon, and he risked blowing his cover. Too late, and the situation might spiral out of control. Just then, Robert placed a hand on Lily's shoulder, his fingers lingering longer than necessary. "Let's talk more about this later," he said, his tone suggestive. "Maybe over dinner?" That was the breaking point. Jonathan stepped forward, clearing his throat loudly. Both Lily and Robert turned to look at him, startled. "Excuse me, Mr. Grant," Jonathan said, feigning innocence. "There's an urgent issue upstairs that requires your attention. Something about the budget report for next quarter." Robert frowned, irritation flickering across his face. "Can't it wait until Monday? We're in the middle of a conversation here." "I'm afraid not," Jonathan replied smoothly. "It's critical. I think you should handle it personally." After a brief hesitation, Robert removed his hand from Lily's shoulder and straightened up. "Fine," he muttered, shooting Jonathan a sharp glance before walking away. Once he was out of earshot, Jonathan turned to Lily, his expression softening. "Are you okay?" Lily nodded quickly, though her hands trembled around her glass. "Yes, thank you, Jason. I didn't know what to say." "You don't have to explain anything," Jonathan assured her. "But if you ever feel ready to share what's been happening, I'm here to listen." For the first time since he'd met her, Lily looked directly at him, her eyes searching his face. "Why are you helping me?" she asked softly. Jonathan hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. "Let's just say I believe everyone deserves to work in a safe environment, and no one should have to put up with certain behaviors." Lily didn't respond right away, but something in her demeanor shifted. She seemed to relax slightly, as though sensing she could trust him. "Okay," she whispered. "Maybe we can talk tomorrow." Jonathan nodded, feeling a surge of hope. If Lily opened up, it would give him the final piece of evidence he needed to expose Robert once and for all. Later that night, as the party wound down, Jonathan returned to his temporary office to review the recordings he'd collected. Listening to Robert's predatory remarks made his blood boil, but he reminded himself to stay focused. Tomorrow he would reach out to Olivia Bennett and finalize their plan. They couldn't afford any missteps, not when so much was at stake. Early, the next morning, Jonathan called Olivia into his makeshift workspace. Together, they listened to the audio clips, each one painting a clearer picture of Robert's misconduct. By the end, Olivia's expression was grim. "This is bad, Jonathan, really bad. There's no way he can deny this." "I know," Jonathan agreed, "but we need to be smart about how we handle it. If we accuse him outright, he'll fight back. We need to make sure we have everything lined up before we act." Olivia nodded thoughtfully. "What about Lily? Does she realize you're the CEO?" "Not yet," Jonathan admitted. "But I think she suspects something. She agreed to talk to me today, which means she might finally open up." True to her word, Lily arrived at Jonathan's desk shortly after lunch. Her movements were hesitant, as though she expected to be turned away. When Jonathan gestured for her to sit, she did so cautiously, folding her hands in her lap. "Lily," Jonathan began gently, "I want you to know that whatever you tell me stays between us, for now. But if you're willing to share, it could help protect others from going through the same thing." Lily took a deep breath, her gaze fixed on the floor. "I didn't want to say anything because I was scared. Scared of losing my job, scared of being labeled a troublemaker, scared of what he might do." "It's okay," Jonathan assured her. "Take your time." Finally, Lily began to speak. She recounted months of subtle manipulation and inappropriate comments from Robert, culminating in the incident at the holiday party. Each detail matched what Jonathan had already observed, reinforcing the validity of his investigation. When she finished, tears glistened in her eyes. "I didn't know who else to turn to," she admitted. "I thought no one would believe me." "I believe you," Jonathan said firmly, "and I promise you won't have to face this alone." With Lily's testimony added to the growing file of evidence, Jonathan felt a renewed sense of purpose. The next step was clear: confront Robert and hold him accountable. But doing so required careful planning. Jonathan and Olivia spent the rest of the day strategizing, ensuring they left no room for error. By the time evening fell, Jonathan was ready. Tomorrow he would unveil the truth, not just to Robert, but to the entire marketing department. It was a risky move, but one he believed was necessary to protect the integrity of Apex Innovations. As he prepared to leave the office, Jonathan allowed himself a moment of reflection. Going undercover had been challenging, even exhausting at times. Yet it had also shown him the strength and resilience of his employees, the ones who endured hardships silently, hoping for change. For the first time in weeks, he felt optimistic. Change was coming, and it would start with exposing the truth. The morning after Lily's confession, Jonathan Hayes woke up earlier than usual. He dressed carefully, choosing an outfit that balanced professionalism with authority. Today was the day he would reveal his true identity and confront Robert Grant in front of the entire marketing department. It was a risky move, but Jonathan believed it was the only way to ensure justice and to send a clear message that such behavior would not be tolerated at Apex Innovations. By the time he arrived at the office, the air felt charged with anticipation. Employees milled about, chatting quietly or typing away at their desks, unaware of what was about to unfold. Jonathan walked straight to the conference room on the third floor, where he had arranged for an emergency meeting. As people began filing in, he stood near the door, greeting them calmly under his assumed name, Jason Miller. Robert arrived last, looking annoyed. "What's this all about?" he asked sharply as he entered the room. "I've got a packed schedule today." Jonathan simply gestured for him to take a seat. Once everyone was settled, he closed the door and moved to the front of the room. For a moment, he scanned the faces before him, some curious, some nervous, and a few defiant. Then, without warning, he removed his glasses and straightened his posture, transforming from the unassuming assistant into the commanding figure of Jonathan Hayes, CEO. Good morning, everyone, he began, his voice steady and clear. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jonathan Hayes, the CEO of Apex Innovations. Gasps rippled through the room as realization dawned on the faces around him. Robert's jaw dropped, and his expression shifted from confusion to alarm. I've been working undercover in this department for several weeks, Jonathan continued, ignoring the murmurs spreading among the employees. My goal was to understand the dynamics within the team and address concerns that have been brought to my attention. He paused, letting his words sink in. Unfortunately, what I discovered was deeply troubling. There have been repeated instances of inappropriate behavior and harassment directed at junior staff members by individuals in positions of power. This kind of conduct is unacceptable, and it has no place in our company. At this point, Jonathan turned on a small speaker, system connected to his laptop. The room fell silent as audio recordings played, one after another, each capturing Robert's predatory remarks and attempts to intimidate or manipulate his subordinates. The voices were unmistakable, and the evidence undeniable. When the playback ended, Jonathan looked directly at Robert, whose face had turned pale. These are just a few examples of your actions, Jonathan said firmly. They align with written statements provided by multiple employees, including Lily Carter, who bravely came forward to share her experiences. Lily sat near the back of the room, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She glanced at Jonathan briefly, gratitude flickering in her eyes. Around her, other employees exchanged glances, some nodding in agreement while others looked horrified. Robert stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "This is ridiculous," he exclaimed. "You're taking these accusations out of context. I was mentoring these employees, trying to help them improve." "No, Robert," Jonathan replied, his tone unwavering. "What you were doing was exploiting your position of authority to make others feel powerless. Your actions created a toxic environment, and that's something we cannot ignore." Before Robert could respond further, Mia Thompson spoke up. Her voice trembled slightly, but her resolve was evident. Était consciente que les autres la regardaient, mais elle continua malgré tout. "Il a raison", dit-elle en regardant Robert. "Vous nous avez souvent fait sentir que nous ne pouvions pas réussir sans votre approbation. Et quand nous essayions de nous défendre, vous nous rabaissez devant tout le monde." Les mots de Mia semblèrent briser une digue. D'autres employés commencèrent à partager leurs propres histoires. Comment Robert leur avait demandé de rester tard pour des réunions non nécessaires, comment il critiquait injustement leur travail, et comment il utilisait sa position pour obtenir des faveurs personnelles. Chaque témoignage ajoutait une nouvelle couche à l'image sombre qui se dessinait. Robert tenta de se défendre, accusant Jonathan d'avoir orchestré un piège et clamant qu'il était victime d'une conspiration. Mais ses protestations sonnaient creux face à la montagne de preuves présentées. Finalement, il se tut, réalisant que toute tentative de nier ou minimiser ses actes serait vaine. Une fois que toutes les voix eurent été entendues, Jonathan reprit la parole. Ce qui s'est passé ici n'est pas seulement une violation de notre politique d'entreprise, c'est une violation de la confiance que nos employés placent en nous. À partir d'aujourd'hui, Robert Grant est suspendu de ses fonctions en attendant une enquête formelle. Nous prendrons toutes les mesures nécessaires pour garantir que cela ne se reproduise jamais. La pièce entière sembla soupirer de soulagement, collectivement. Pour la première fois depuis longtemps, les membres de l'équipe se sentaient libérés d'un poids écrasant. Certains pleuraient doucement, tandis que d'autres échangeaient des regards de solidarité. Après la réunion, Jonathan s'assit avec Olivia Bennett pour discuter des prochaines étapes. Ils décidèrent de mettre en place des formations obligatoires sur le harcèlement et la conduite professionnelle, ainsi que de renforcer les procédures de signalement. De plus, ils annonceraient publiquement que la direction soutenait pleinement les victimes et encouragerait une culture de transparence et de respect. Plus tard dans la journée, Lily approcha timidement Jonathan dans son bureau. « Merci », murmura-t-elle, les larmes aux yeux. « Je sais que c'était difficile pour vous aussi, mais ce que vous avez fait, ça change tout. » Jonathan sourit doucement. « C'est toi qui as eu du courage, Lily. Tu as parlé alors que tu avais peur, et c'est grâce à toi que nous avons pu agir. » Alors qu'il regardait par la fenêtre de son bureau, Observant les employés retourner à leurs tâches avec un nouvel espoir visible dans leur démarche, Jonathan ressentit un profond sentiment de satisfaction. Bien qu'il y aurait encore des défis à relever, il savait qu'Apex Innovation était sur la bonne voie vers un avenir meilleur. In the days following the explosive meeting, Jonathan Hayes felt a mix of emotions: relief, pride, but also a deep sense of responsibility. He had exposed Robert Grant's misconduct and taken a stand against toxic behavior within Apex Innovations. But he knew that true change required more than just removing one bad actor. It meant creating a culture where every employee felt safe, respected, and empowered to speak up without fear of retaliation. The company buzzed with conversations about what had happened. Some employees were still processing the shock of discovering that their CEO had gone undercover as an assistant. Others expressed gratitude for Jonathan's bold move, saying it gave them hope for a better workplace. However, there were whispers of skepticism too, questions about whether this was just a temporary fix or if real, lasting changes would follow. To address these concerns, Jonathan called for an all-hands meeting. Unlike the tense gathering in the marketing department, this event was held in the main auditorium designed to include everyone from interns to senior executives. As employees filed into the room, they noticed the large screen behind the podium displaying the words, "Building a Better Future." The message set the tone for what was to come. When Jonathan stepped up to speak, the room fell silent. He began by acknowledging the courage of those who had come forward during his investigation. "What happened in the marketing department was unacceptable," he said, his voice steady but warm. Dozens of eyes focused on him, hanging on to every word. "But I want to make something clear. This isn't just about one person or one department. This is about us, all of us, working together to create a safer, stronger company." He went on to outline a series of sweeping changes aimed at fostering a healthier work environment. First, mandatory anti-harassment training would be implemented across all departments. These sessions wouldn't just cover policies, they would focus on building empathy and understanding among colleagues. Second, a new anonymous reporting system would be introduced, allowing employees to share concerns without fear of exposure. Finally, Jonathan announced plans to establish a diversity and inclusion task force led by Mia Thompson to ensure that marginalized voices were heard and valued. Mia herself sat in the front row, visibly moved by the announcement. When Jonathan invited her to join him at the podium, she stood hesitantly before addressing the crowd. "I never thought I'd see the day when our leadership would listen so openly," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "But Mr. Hayes has shown us that change is possible. If we all commit to supporting each other, we can turn this moment into a turning point, for Apex Innovations and for ourselves." The audience erupted into applause, and for the first time in weeks the air felt lighter. People exchanged smiles and nods, their shared relief palpable. Among them was Lily Carter, who sat quietly but with a small smile playing on her lips. She had been hesitant to step forward initially, but now she felt a newfound confidence, not just in herself, but in the company as a whole. After the meeting, Jonathan took time to personally thank Lily, Mia, and several others who had played key roles in uncovering the truth. "You've made this company stronger," he told them sincerely, "and I promise you we're not stopping here. We'll keep working to make sure no one ever has to go through what you did." Over the next few weeks, Jonathan threw himself into implementing the initiatives he had announced. He worked closely with Olivia Bennett and the newly formed task force to identify areas where the company could improve. Feedback sessions were organized, giving employees at all levels a chance to voice their thoughts and suggestions. Slowly but surely, a shift began to take place. Conversations around accountability and respect became part of the daily dialogue, replacing the silence and fear that had once dominated. One afternoon, as Jonathan walked through the open plan office, he noticed something remarkable. Employees seemed more relaxed, chatting freely and collaborating without the tension that had lingered under Robert's leadership. Even the junior staff members, who had previously kept their heads down, appeared more confident in sharing ideas during meetings. Lily approached him later that day, holding a folder filled with notes. "Mr. Hayes," she began shyly, "I wanted to show you something. Since everything came out, I've been thinking about ways to improve communication within teams. I put together some ideas. I hope they're helpful." Jonathan accepted the folder with a smile. "Thank you, Lily. Your input means a lot. And please, call me Jonathan. You've earned that right." Her cheeks flushed with pride, and she nodded before returning to her desk. Watching her go, Jonathan felt a surge of optimism. This was what leadership was truly about, not just making decisions from the top, but empowering others to grow and thrive. As months passed, the effects of Jonathan's efforts became even more evident. Employee satisfaction surveys showed significant improvements, and turnover rates dropped dramatically. Apex Innovations began attracting top talent, drawn by its reputation as a progressive and inclusive workplace. Most importantly, the company's culture shifted in meaningful ways. People started looking out for one another, fostering a sense of community that extended beyond professional boundaries. During a quiet evening in his office, Jonathan reflected on the journey he had undertaken. Going undercover had been risky, even uncomfortable at times, but it had taught him invaluable lessons about the importance of trust, transparency, and humility. He realized now that being a leader wasn't just about steering the ship. It was about ensuring everyone on board felt safe and supported. The final piece of closure came when the board of directors officially terminated Robert Grant's employment after concluding their investigation. His departure marked the end of an era, but also the beginning of a brighter chapter for Apex Innovations. To celebrate the progress made, Jonathan hosted a company-wide event, inviting employees to share stories of growth and resilience. The atmosphere was electric, filled with laughter, music, and camaraderie. As the evening drew to a close, Jonathan stood at the edge of the crowd, watching as people danced and mingled. Olivia joined him, handing him a cup of coffee. "You did good, Jonathan," she said simply. "Really good," he smiled, savoring the warmth of the moment. "We did good, Olivia." Together, looking around at the faces of his colleagues, some familiar, others new, Jonathan felt a profound sense of fulfillment. Apex Innovations was far from perfect, but it was moving in the right direction. And as long as he remained committed to protecting its people, he knew the company would continue to flourish. With that thought, Jonathan raised his coffee cup in a silent toast to the future, a future built on trust, respect, and the collective strength of everyone who called Apex Innovations home. Months had passed since Jonathan Hayes exposed Robert Grant's misconduct, and the changes at Apex Innovations continued to take root. The company was transforming, not overnight, but steadily, like a garden nurtured with care. Employees who had once walked on eggshells now moved through the halls with confidence. Conversations that used to be hushed were now open and honest. It was clear that something fundamental had shifted. Jonathan, however, wasn't one to rest on his laurels. He knew that maintaining momentum required constant effort. Every week he met with the Diversity and Inclusion Task Force led by Mia Thompson. Together they reviewed feedback from employees and brainstormed ways to keep improving the workplace culture. Mia had proven herself to be an invaluable leader, calm under pressure, insightful, and deeply committed to making a difference. One afternoon, during one of their regular meetings, Mia brought up an idea that caught Jonathan's attention. "We've been focusing a lot on policies and training," she said, leaning forward slightly. "And those are important, don't get me wrong. But I think we should also celebrate the positives, the people who are already embodying the values we want to promote." Jonathan nodded thoughtfully. "What do you have in mind?" Mia smiled, her enthusiasm growing. "How about starting a recognition program? We could highlight employees who go above and beyond to support their colleagues or contribute to a positive work environment. Something simple, like a monthly award or shout-outs in the company newsletter." "That's a great idea," Jonathan replied, feeling a spark of inspiration. "It's not just about fixing problems, it's about reinforcing the good behaviors we want to see more of." With Mia's help, Jonathan launched the initiative, calling it the Apex Champions Program. Each month, employees were invited to nominate coworkers who demonstrated kindness, leadership, or teamwork. The winners would receive a small trophy and a feature in the company newsletter, along with a heartfelt note from Jonathan himself. The response was overwhelming. Nominations poured in, highlighting stories of collaboration, mentorship, and compassion. One employee wrote about how a colleague had stayed late to help them meet a tight deadline. Another praised a manager who always made time to check in on their team's well-being. Reading these submissions filled Jonathan with pride. He could see the ripple effects of the cultural shift spreading throughout the organization. Among the first recipients of the Apex Champions Award was Lily Carter. Her nomination came from several co-workers, all praising her dedication and willingness to help others. When Jonathan presented her with the trophy during a staff meeting, Lily blushed deeply but couldn't hide her smile. "I never imagined I'd be recognized for anything," she admitted afterward. "But knowing my efforts matter, it means so much." Encouraged by the success of the program, Jonathan decided to expand its scope. He introduced workshops focused on personal development, inviting experts to teach skills like effective communication, conflict resolution, and emotional intelligence. These sessions weren't mandatory, but attendance was high, as employees eagerly embraced opportunities to grow both professionally and personally. Meanwhile, Jonathan remained vigilant about addressing any lingering issues. Though the company had come a long way, he understood that no workplace was immune to challenges. Whenever concerns arose, whether about workload, management styles, or interpersonal dynamics, he encouraged open dialogue. His door was always open, and he made sure employees knew their voices mattered. One day, as Jonathan strolled through the office, he overheard a conversation between two junior staff members. They were discussing a project deadline, debating strategies to ensure everything stayed on track. What struck him most was the tone of their exchange, respectful, constructive, and free of the fear that had once permeated similar discussions. It was a small moment, but it spoke volumes about how far the company had come. Later that week, Jonathan received an email from Olivia Bennett. Attached was a report summarizing the results of the latest employee satisfaction survey. The numbers were impressive. Trust in leadership had skyrocketed, reports of harassment had plummeted, and overall morale was at an all-time high. "You've done it, Jonathan," Olivia wrote in the accompanying note. "This is what real change looks like." Reading the report, Jonathan felt a wave of gratitude, not just for the data but for the people behind it. None of this progress would have been possible without the courage and resilience of employees like Lily, Mia, and countless others who had dared to believe in a better future. To mark the milestone, Jonathan organized a special event, a town hall meeting where employees could reflect on the journey so far and share their hopes for the road ahead. The gathering took place in the same auditorium where he had announced the initial reforms. This time, though, the mood was celebratory rather than somber. As Jonathan stood at the podium, he scanned the room, taking in the sea of faces before him. "When I started this journey," he began, "I didn't know exactly where it would lead. All I knew was that we needed to do better, for ourselves, for each other, and for the future of this company." He paused, letting his words resonate. "Today I can say with confidence that we've made incredible strides. But let's not forget, this isn't the end, it's just the beginning. There will always be room to improve, to learn, and to grow. And as long as we continue to support one another, there's no limit to what we can achieve." The applause that followed was thunderous, echoing off the walls of the auditorium. Employees cheered, clapped, and even whistled, their excitement palpable. When the noise finally subsided, Jonathan stepped aside to allow others to speak. One by one, employees took the stage, sharing their own reflections and dreams for the future. Lily was among them. Standing nervously at the microphone, she looked out at the crowd. "When I first started here, I didn't think my voice mattered," she said softly. "But thanks to everyone in this room, and especially to Mr. Hayes, I've learned that it does. We all have the power to make a difference, no matter how small it might seem." Her words drew a standing ovation, leaving Jonathan momentarily speechless. He realized then that the true measure of success wasn't in the numbers or accolades. It was in the lives touched and transformed by the collective effort of the entire team. In the weeks that followed, Jonathan found himself reflecting often on the lessons he had learned. Going undercover had been a bold move, but it had taught him something far more valuable than any secret investigation ever could: the importance of humility, empathy, and connection. Leadership wasn't about being untouchable. It was about rolling up your sleeves and standing shoulder to shoulder with the people you served. As he prepared to leave the office late one evening, Jonathan paused by the window overlooking the city skyline. Below, cars zipped along streets, lit by the golden glow of streetlights. Inside, the hum of activity signaled a thriving workplace, a testament to the hard work and determination of everyone at Apex Innovations. For the first time in a long while, Jonathan allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction. The road ahead wouldn't always be smooth, but he was ready to face whatever challenges lay in store. After all, he wasn't alone. Together, they had built something stronger, brighter, and infinitely more hopeful. And that, he thought with a smile, was worth every step of the journey.